The June 14th meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council will now come to order. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Except it's July.
I'm sorry, July 14th. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, and with the weather today, it feels more like October 14th. Prior to the start of each city council meeting, we have an opportunity for residents to address us on issues related to Eden Prairie city business. Our meetings are generally held the first and third Tuesdays of each month. If you wish to speak at open podium, please contact the city manager's office at 952-949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, your phone number, and the subject you wish to have addressed. This portion of the meeting is from 6:30 to 6:55. It is not recorded. It is not televised. If time permits, we do have an opportunity for unscheduled speakers to address us. If you have any questions, again, contact the city manager's office at 949-8412. The first item on the agenda tonight is a presentation from Tim Litvin, who is with the Tour de Tonka. We've heard from you every year for how many years now?
This is number 9, Madam
Number
Mayor.
9.
So,
okay, go ahead, Mr.
Thank
Litvin.
you very much for having me down here tonight. And Eden Prairie plays a key role in the success of what has been the success the last 8 years for Tour de Tonka bike ride. The Tour de Tonka bike ride comes through Eden Prairie, gladly so, on Saturday, August 2nd, just a couple of weeks from now. So thanks again for having me down, and I'll walk you through a few highlights from the past and show you what's in store for you this year. But big news up front, and I'll tease you with a little later, is we have a wedding at Tour de Tonka this year. So it'll be our first of those, and that doesn't happen very often. So I'm ready when I guess I am, and here we go, and here we don't go. So there we go. Thank you. All right, and you can see the participation last year. We were at almost 3,000 riders, and many of those came from Eden Prairie. And I'll walk through the next slide, and you can see participation from the several years that has been Tour de Tonka. It's been nothing but climbing upwards, which is a good thing. And that's thanks to all your wonderful trails and roads here and your wonderful police department. Tom Lowry works closely with me on this event, and he's fantastic to work with. Demographics have been pretty much a male-dominated event the last few years, but we'll hopefully turn that around with a few more women in the crowd here tonight. We'll get some, and we're having a little technical difficulties.
We are. We have a new AV system.
So that's all right. I can just wing it.
Some tweaking, apparently.
That's all right. Okay. I have a little toy for each of you on your counter, and we're going to throw a little more enthusiasm at the start this year than what we perhaps have done in the past. So there's going to be about hundreds and hundreds of these passed out, and they make a heck of a noise. So if you would all care to join me tonight, you have one, and go ahead, unwrap it. We have to show the crowd here how Tour de Tonka will start this year. Again, Tour de Tonka is the first Saturday in August, and it starts and stops at Minnetonka High School. There are 6 routes ranging between 16 miles and 100 miles. There's a small little pipe that you're going to blow through, and we'll impress the audience here tonight. So just go ahead and let her rip. Ready? There you go. So here comes the train. So that'll be the start of Tour de Tonka this year. Hey, you're getting rave reviews already. Like I said, Eden Prairie is one of the top 10 participating communities, and we thank you for everything you've done for us. Coming up in a couple of weeks, if anybody out there wants to ride or volunteer, it's tourdetonka.org, and we're always looking for more volunteers. There's almost 500 volunteers last year that touched this event. It's a major event. It's not just a little bike ride. It's a big deal, stretching out over 3 counties and 24 cities. So it goes all over the place, and thankfully right through here. The distances that come through Eden Prairie are the 26-mile. That's and then we skirt it with the 16-mile ride as well. But 26 comes pretty much through Eden Prairie, and that'll be about 500 bike riders coming through Eden Prairie. About 3,000 plus are expected. Riders can register on the day of the event as well. So any questions or comments, I'll gladly field them, but thank you for your time tonight.
Mr. Case, did you have okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sorry about the
it happens.
Visual component. Okay. The next item on the agenda is an acknowledgement of the donations that the city received for our 4th of July hometown celebration. And before I turn it over to Mr. Lothammer to talk about that, our Park and Rec Director, I just wanted to say thank you to city staff who pulled together a really outstanding 4th of July program. I got great compliments from people on the musical events, particularly both the band that we had the day of the 4th of July and also the GB Layton group that appeared the night before. People really enjoyed the music. It was great. The fireworks were outstanding. There's nothing like looking over Round Lake and seeing our fireworks exploding, and you see, I think it must have been Chaska and Excelsior in the distance, and just a great display. And Mr. Littman talked about the importance of volunteers, and the volunteers for our 4th of July celebration are very important. We have a lot of volunteers that work long hours on the 4th, making sure that we all have a great time there. And there's also a lot of staff members that are there all day long, making sure that everybody is having fun and safe. So thank you very much for organizing a great event, and take it over, Mr. Lighthammer.
You're welcome. Thank you, Your Honor, and council members, and thanks for your participation in the event, too. It goes without saying that having you there and being a part of some of the ceremonial pieces is really important to our staff, as well as the people that are there to partake in the event. So we really appreciate your involvement as well. Wanted to highlight tonight, in addition to the staff and to the volunteers that it takes to put an event like this on, it does take some dollars and some in-kind donations. And we're fortunate to have community organizations and also businesses that step up year after year. So many of the names I'm going to read to you, you've heard them year in and year out. And not just for this event, but for many of our other events. But specific to the 4th of July, we've got a silver category where organizations give between $100 and $499. And in that category, Wall Trends, A to Z Rental, Flying Cloud Animal Hospital, the Lions Tap, Biff's. They also gave some in-kind donations as well. In the gold, between $500 and $999, we have the CES Group for $500. And in the platinum, between $1,000 and $4,099, we've got the J.A. Price Agency, Starkey Hearing, Republic Service. Those were 3 of our major sponsors for this event. So we really appreciate what they do for us in helping us bring additional amenities to this event. And also the other groups that go along with this, the pickleball tournament by the Southwest Metro Pickleball Association, the Optimist Club with the 5K run, the ability to bring those community organizations together really at no additional financial cost to the city, but to add to the event. That's something that we've really appreciated the last couple of years too, and I think they should be recognized for all of their efforts. Hard to not see the Lions, members of the Lions Club with helping with beer sales and bingo and just being a great piece of the event. So our community organizations really come together as well to help us out, as well as individual volunteers and the businesses. So I want to thank them all tonight, but especially the resolution tonight is thanking the donations.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Lighthammer. Is there a motion?
I would move to adopt the resolution accepting in-kind donations of $1,845 and monetary contributions of $3,250 for the 4th of July hometown celebration.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda and other items of business?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any items to add? I know I have one item I'd like to add.
And I would like to add one brief item under council member reports.
And so would I.
Anyone else?
I want to take one thing off the consent calendar
Okay. All right.
when that time comes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All in favor of the agenda as moved? Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes of the council workshop held Tuesday, June 17th?
Move approval.
Second.
Any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes from the council meeting held that same date, June 17th?
So
Move
moved.
approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any items to correct there? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Consent calendar, is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
I would like to take item B off of the consent calendar.
Okay. Is your motion including pulling off item B? You want to vote on A through L without B, or you just want to discuss it?
I would like to discuss it and perhaps refer it back to the police
Okay.
department.
All right. Why don't we do discussion now, Mr. Getchell?
Yes, Mayor. So you want to take B off for separate action, and then C and D, the update today is C and D are coming off the agenda, so that's
Okay.
going to have to come back in August. So those two consent items get moved. It's
Okay.
also related to the HRA. We'll get to that, the HRA public hearing. We're going to have to continue that hearing too. But we would ask that you approve A and E through
Okay.
L.
Okay, why don't we, can you make the motion?
Yes,
for A without B, C, and D?
Yep, I make the motion of, on the consent calendar of A, subtract B, C, and D, and then follow E through L.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar passes. Now we're going to discuss item B, the kennel license application. I assume you would like to make some statement, Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, this is the first time in the 8 years I've been on the council that I ever remember this much community input on a kennel license. There's often no input, or maybe somebody complaining a bit about barking. On the other hand, I would like people to be able to keep their pets. They're important to people. It seems like there might be some middle ground with this. If we sent it back to the police department, they had talked about, a kennel that had cement on the bottom and went over the top, so there's no way for the dogs to get out. I have friends, I'll admit, they have show dogs, that they don't want anybody getting into the dogs, but that's the kind of runs they have. And that maybe that should be the expectation of having some kind of situation other than just a 6-foot fence where the dogs cannot get out and people walking on the public paths or on the street nearby have some expectation that the dogs cannot get out. So that's sort of what I would like to do. I don't want to tell them they have to get rid of their pets, and I don't want to tell them that they can't feel safe in their own yards. But I think there's a way to do it, though it's perhaps not the cheapest way.
Councilmember Case.
I think I feel comfortable with the due diligence that the city has gone through, and primarily with the idea that we have almost like a 5-month trial period here. And this gets reviewed January 15 and gets denied on the spot if there's any infraction. I, too, like all of us, probably are viewing this from a dog lover perspective, and then we all empathize with the Johnsons. I think we all have that fear piece in us if there's something that's making our yard, our neighborhood less safe. That being said, we can't live, none of us can ever live in the 100 different alternatives that may happen in our future out there when 99 of them never will. And we spend all that worry time on the 99 when the one will happen, whatever the one is. And the one that will happen ought to be based a little bit on history. And the history, the way I understand it, is that these dogs have no history of biting people. If they did, it would be an instant, denial. So we have a positive history on specific dogs, a fear future based on other dogs, but we have this 5-month trial period built in. So a 6-foot fence sounds great to me. We've already had the condition, I believe, that it has to be at owner expense fence, nothing shared at all with the Johnsons. That's a given. So we have a 6-foot fence with dogs that have no history of any negative issues. And we have a 5-month trial period that if there's any issue or problem in that, they get denied in January. So I feel really comfortable that our city has done its due diligence and we have a plan. And I say put the plan in action.
Councilmember Wickstrom.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I spoke with Mrs. Johnson on the phone, and I know that your fear and your worry are grounded in your care and love for your family, and your fear is, it's very real for you. It's very obvious to me. And then I appreciate your neighbor having spoken as well. I do agree that people do get to have rights, but I think rights with safety in mind. And I don't know if there's any other alternative. Definitely not sharing the fence, having the this party have their own separate fence. I think that's very important. I don't know if 6 feet is appropriate or not. I'm not sure. I'm just going to believe that our police department did work with that. I don't know if there's any other alternatives in terms of making the neighbors feel safe. So I guess my view is maybe it is something that we can try and see how that works with a 6-foot fence.
Just a comment I would like to make. I think Sherry said it very well, the sympathy that we have for the Johnsons and the understanding that we have for all the neighbors around there about the fear and the discomfort, and you're looking out for your grandchildren and your kids. And that's a big issue. This is really rare. I don't remember, I've been on the council pretty much since 1994. I don't remember ever seeing a dog license or a kennel license for 5 dogs. And it's kind of an odd situation, I realize, with which the Splendid family brought these groups of dogs together. So it's a really unusual situation. I'm very empathetic to the dog owners because dogs, even though I don't have dogs, I know that they are like family to the people that have them. They're very important. And it would be hard to say no. I just wish that there was some way that we could make sure that this is truly going to be a safe 6-foot fence so that there are no problems with it. And so when you put it in, I really hope that you pay a lot of attention to the underground issue and the burrowing issue. I would encourage you to explore options such as maybe the fence going up and then internally you have a bend in the top with an angle so that it makes it harder to jump over the fence. That might be an option, but just realize that I don't know how sympathetic we will be when this license has to be renewed in January if there are issues. So does somebody want to make a motion? Or?
I would just make one more comment, and that is that I would encourage the Costigans to work with the neighbors and really try to make sure that everyone feels more comfortable than they currently do, because I don't think there is a high level of comfort right now, and that's not a good thing for either neighbors. And so I think it's very critical and important that the Costigans work with the neighbors to assure that they are comfortable with the situation. And I really would encourage you to do that, because I think in order to put something like this forward, which is kind of an unusual case, I think we really want to make sure that everyone feels safe in their own homes, in their own yards. So do everything you can to make sure that the fencing is safe, that the dogs aren't going to be out, and then also maybe step up the level of supervision of the dogs so that when they are out, that you're assured that they're not, barking, growling, or anything like that at the neighbors. And I think that'll go a long way towards making everyone feel more comfortable.
I'll make a motion I move to approve the kennel license application for 9980 Dell Road with all of the conditions that we've discussed and that are written in our packet.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. And please let us know if there are incidents. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. Eden Heights East is our first public hearing. Mr. Getchell?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have a request for a zoning district change from R122 to R113.5 on 1.7 acres, and also a preliminary plat for that same area, which is the southwest corner of Pioneer Trail and Eden Prairie Road. This is a proposal for a 4-lot single-family subdivision, and it does conform to all the requirements in that R113.5 zoning district and with the comprehensive plan, so it's a pretty straightforward development. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the project at their June 9th meeting. And the project proponent is here to answer any questions you have, maybe provide a brief overview, and staff can answer any questions you may have as well.
All right. Mr. Schneider, did you want to do an overview?
Well, I think I can keep it fairly straightforward. Again, this is 2 large lots that were divisible into 4 standard single-family lots. The only slight difference in this layout is that at the staff's request, we redesigned the 4 lots to provide future access to the Olson's property, which live in a home immediately to the east of us. They currently have their utilities and their driveways off of the other city street, but at some point in time, if they decided to sell or someone else wanted to divide that, it would accommodate 2 lots, and those lots are now being designed to be served off of our road, which would be turned into a full cul-de-sac at that point in time. So we spent a fair amount of time working through the grading and drainage to make sure that that worked right, and then we're also providing as part of our a private easement over those areas that need to be regraded to make the cul-de-sac work. So when that future home builder or buyers decide that they do want to split that up, they'll have the rights to go on and regrade and slope that property to put in a full cul-de-sac, whereas putting in a similar turnaround that's there right now. So other than that, we've met all the drainage and ponding requirements. I think this will be a great addition to the neighborhood. The houses will be custom designed houses to fit these lots, very similar to the subdivision to the east of it. So it should be very straightforward. We're working with some custom builders so that we can actually do the grading with the homes so that we minimize the amount of import. It does require some imported material because it is low, but because we can excavate the basements and do some other things, we can do a lot of on-site grading and minimize that truck traffic that may come in with that. So again, I'm available for any questions, but I think it's fairly straightforward.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Schneider? Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience that wants to address the council on this subdivision?
Seeing none, I move to close the public hearing and approve first reading of the ordinance for zoning district change from R1-22 to R1-13.5 on 1.7 acres and adopt the resolution for preliminary plat on 1.7 acres into 4 lots, and direct staff to prepare a development agreement incorporating staff and commission recommendations and council conditions.
Second.
Didn't want you to
Councilmember
follow the
Case.
question there on me.
Okay, Councilmember Case.
Yeah, just a couple questions of staff. I didn't have questions of the proponent. So, I guess, Janet, I thought, well, a couple questions about the cul-de-sac. If those lots don't develop for years and years, we have this situation. Does that make it difficult for fire trucks and anything else to turn around in there? I know there's a little bit of a widening that's attempted there, but we're a little bit encumbered until that were to fully develop, right?
Your Honor, Councilmember Case, I know that this particular design was reviewed thoroughly by our Development Review Committee, and our city engineer actually proposed this temporary solution as better than just the dead end that you see sometimes.
Okay.
So I believe this does provide the opportunity to turn around most vehicles, whether the largest, would make it. I can't answer that, but.
And just in terms of the future, I guess I'm concerned about that, or I'm confused that northern future lot, I thought that was public county property now. Some of us have gone to put campaign signs there in the last couple of elections and found out that it's not owned privately. So I'm confused.
Right, there is obviously some right-of-way on the corner. You can see that the corner is kind of shaved off. That's excess right-of-way, so hopefully you're in the legal right-of-way area.
So is that lot currently owned by the same owner as the southern lot?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Good to know.
All right, any other questions? Okay, is there a motion?
It's been made and seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item is a combination light pole cell tower at Eden Prairie High School. The proponent is Verizon Wireless. Mr. Getchell, are you doing this?
Yes,
or-
I can
okay.
introduce the items. Mayor and Council, this is a site plan review for a proposed 119-foot Verizon Wireless cell tower, which would replace an existing 100-foot pole that overlooks the stadium at Eden Prairie High School, a 116-foot monopole with a 3-foot lightning rod for a total of 119 feet to accommodate a wireless antenna and then the ground equipment that would be constructed as part of that. You normally review site plans when you're dealing with more than something 80 feet tall, and you also are being asked to provide a slight revision to the setback of 450 feet from what would calculate out to be 476 feet. We're recommending approval, and the feeling is that this is an example of co-location. So whenever we can have antennas be co-located on top of existing water towers, lighting supports, that's something that we support, because then it would prohibit or keep the from the construction of another large monopole. And again, this is replacing something that is similar in size to what's already out there. I do believe the project proponent is here to answer any questions that you may have, maybe provide a brief overview, and this is a public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Paul Harrington. I'm an authorized representative of Verizon Wireless. I appreciate the very comprehensive staff report and report of the council member regarding our project. We are trying to accomplish the objectives of the municipal code, and that is using existing structures where we can. The school districts have been a great partner. My firm also did the project that's currently on site for T-Mobile. It's on the north side of the field. The council had seen that about 5 years ago. So we did explore, just one bit of information that you might be interested in. We did explore the opportunity of locating on that tower. The school district, due to our equipment needs at the site, they have a long jump and triple jump area that they use for track events on that side of the field. And they said it's getting a little cluttered out there. They didn't want us to put our equipment on that side of the field, so we looked to the south side of the field. It allowed us to also utilize the bleachers, and we are custom building our shelter underneath the bleachers, so it'll be out of sight and screened very well from anyone's view. So with that, I can certainly answer any questions. We would appreciate your support and approval of the project.
Paul, I'm sorry I didn't catch your last name, but our report is a little bit confusing because it says it's a Verizon tower and then it addresses T-Mobile's goal of improvement to cell phone coverage. And you're saying the current structure is T-Mobile?
Correct.
And is it going to be T-Mobile and Verizon on this tower?
No, just
Okay.
Verizon. T-Mobile is on the tower on the north side of the field.
Okay.
They are currently in place.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just a couple of questions. So in terms of the auxiliary structures, you're talking about a 20 by 30 foot enclosure. Does that include all the screening around it, or is that just the equipment itself?
That's the building. It's put into a custom built shelter that we're going to build underneath the bleachers on the south side of the field. So there's existing landscaping outside of the fencing of the bleachers it's not going to be disrupted at all. So that'll provide a screen there. We're also city staff has asked us to match the brick that's on the school now for the outside of that shelter. So even though it's underneath the bleacher structure, we'll be matching the brick that's on the school building. So.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the council on this cell structure? Okay.
Seeing none, I would move to close the public hearing and adopt the resolution for site plan review on 66.55 acres.
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. Payment of claims is next. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
Any items to question? Hearing none, a roll call, please.
Councilmember Aho,
Aye.
Councilmember Butcher Wickstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Case,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Mayor Tara Lukens.
Aye. Thank you. That brings us to our next portion, which is ordinances and resolutions. We will be discussing Southwest Light Rail Transit municipal consent. Mr. Getchell.
Mayor, thank you. I'll be brief because I believe this is the third consecutive meeting this item has been before you. As you know, you have been in, the city's been in a receipt of municipal consent plans from the Met Council for the last few months. And on May 20th, you held a public hearing in here as required by state statute. And then you took up the issue again at your June meeting and continued that hearing until this evening. According to process, today is the last day. Tonight's the last day that you are allowed to take action on the municipal consent plans. You may recall, following the public hearing, we provided, city attorney provided a detailed overview as to what municipal consent entails, what the process is, and in some cases what it is not. We can obviously go over that issue again, but we also have a resolution in the packet for your consideration. And it has been slightly altered since the prior resolution of a month ago. So if so desired, our Public Works Director could provide an overview on the resolution that you're being asked to take action on tonight, and to maybe update you on some of the changes that have occurred. A big portion of the packet also dealt with getting a lot of input over the entire process. So you've seen that consecutive meetings. If you weren't getting it in your email inbox, it's been in this packet and it's been in the prior packet. So we've tried to keep a record of all that information as well. So if you have any questions related to specific properties or specific issues, the project staff is here, city staff is here as well. But if we can, we'd like to start with an overview of the resolution you're being asked to consider.
Your Honor and City Council members, tonight before you is a resolution of support for Southwest Light Rail. The resolution does, however, have a number of issues that are outstanding and declares that consent is granted based on the city's full faith and trust in the Metropolitan Council's commitment to arrive at a resolution satisfactory to the city. And those issues, I'll go through those 5 issues. The first would be the location of a 160 space parking facility in close proximity to Town Center Station, which would be provided by beginning of revenue service. To clarify, the municipal consent plans identified 160 space facility by 2030, and I think that may have been a typo. I think that we're both in agreement that that needs to be operational the day they are in revenue service. So that was one condition. There was also another one that minimizes disruption to businesses, residents, Southwest Transit Services, vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic during construction through innovative practices. That's something that we heard from a number of the property owners, business owners along the alignment. We felt that was important to include. Third, provide strong communication with the public during design and construction that is visually pleasing, timely, reliable, and easy to understand. We know how important open, concise communication is. We want to make sure that that continues to be carried forward into construction. I think they've done a very good job up to this point. Number 4, seek guidance and input from the City of Eden Prairie Parks, Recreation, Arts, and Natural Resources Commission on incorporation of public art into the project. Again, another important component of the project. We'd like to have the opportunity for our community to have a voice in what is designed and constructed through Eden Prairie. And then number 5, complete the agreement between the council and Southwest Transit pertaining to understandings, goals, and potential future agreements relating to the co-location of the council's proposed Southwest Light Rail Transit project within Southwest Transit's existing operations at that station. So again, we've heard from the council, we've heard from the public how important it is that we protect Southwest Transit and their future operations. So we're asking that they continue to move forward in resolving those issues. The resolution also goes on to request that the council and its staff continue to work with the City of Eden Prairie to evaluate the inclusion of the following locally requested capital improvements. The first, that the Town Center Station be constructed as a side running platform. 2, the design and construction of a north-south road from Town Center Station to Singletree. 3, construction of a trail from Prairie Center Drive and the Highway 212 off-ramp to the Southwest Station. 4, the grading and installation of a trail adjacent to the tracks from City West Station south towards Shady Oak Road. Number 5, enhance and improve the park-like setting along Technology Drive and Prairie Center Drive, specifically around Purgatory Park. Modification of the grade-separated crossing at Valley View Road such that it minimizes LRT travel time through the elimination of sharp curves. Number 7, rounded, fluted, and tubular catenary poles throughout Eden Prairie. Aesthetics was something that we heard through a lot of the public comments that are attached to our agenda tonight. I think that can be enhanced through the appropriate catenary system. Number 8 was direct fixation or embedded track being utilized through appropriate locations in Eden Prairie. And then finally, the use of alternative materials for fencing, bridge railings, and other appurtenances at appropriate locations, along with agreements for the long-term maintenances of those facilities. So I think those 9 things, along with the 5 that I spoke of previously, help solidify a nice set of plans that city staff has gotten behind. If it's okay, I'd also like to just maybe talk about a few things that have been included or changed since the LPA plans were first submitted that I think are very positive for Eden Prairie and easy for us to get behind. The first is the fact that most, if not all, of our major corridors have grade-separated crossings, and that wasn't the case with the LPA. If you recall, Flying Cloud Drive at 9 Mile Creek was proposed to be at grade. Valley View Road at Flying Cloud Drive, again, was another at-grade crossing. I think that we worked with the project office. They've heard what our concerns are, and I think in their eyes, in operation of LRT, they realized that it did make sense to have grade-separated crossings at those locations, and complementing all of the other major corridors that are grade-separated crossings. We've also moved to a more centrally located town center station that conforms with our comprehensive guide plan. That was a goal that we set out very early, that we wanted to be in alignment with our comprehensive guide plan, and that station ultimately was relocated a little bit farther south. We were also able to keep the Mitchell Station. There was a period there where that was eliminated or proposed for elimination, and I think the negative impacts to Southwest Transit, to this portion of Eden Prairie, were too great, and I think we made a very concerted effort to get that back into the project, the original scope of the project, and that is included in the municipal consent plans. Also, one thing that we can't forget is that we were a contender for the OMF, and we had a number of sites that were identified as potential OMF locations, and that is no longer the case, and if it would have been, it would have been lost tax revenue, would have been impact to local jobs, and from my standpoint, it could have been the relocation of our maintenance facility where our park, streets, and fleet operate out of. So that was something that was avoided as that OMF was located in another site. And another thing that I think is worth mentioning is that we did have our city traffic engineer embedded in the project because of his expertise and knowledge of our community. And it provided a high level of comfort for me when we did the traffic analysis that we had somebody that truly understood our transportation system. So I think that was definitely a benefit to the city during design. I think it'll be a benefit to our city long after the project is built. Somebody who understood why certain decisions were made. And I think it provided a level of comfort when the traffic analysis was done and we had results that it was something that we could really put some faith in because we knew who was doing a lot of the work. So I think there were a number of positive benefits that came in working with the project office. They were very open, willing to understand what our issues were and propose solutions to that, and I think they did a very good job of that. So at the end of the day, we do have a resolution of support for Southwest Light Rail, and I would be open to answering any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Ellis, first of all?
I actually have
Okay. Ms. Wickstrom.
Yes, I do have one question. First of all, thank you. That was very informative and I think comforting, your report, Mr. Ellis. I do have one question I was hoping that you would address for our audience here, and that is, I think we probably all have received calls from a local business who is concerned about the placement of the alignment and is interested in having the line moved to the other side of 212. And so my question is if you would just explain this and talk about why the alignment is the way that it is. in the plan, in the design plan?
Certainly, yes. We did have a number of conversations with the property owner that is along the west side of Highway 212, north of Shady Oak Road. We heard their concerns. They preferred to have the track alignment on the opposite side of 212. We did meet with the Southwest Project Office. We were open to any ideas. Their concerns were aesthetics, visibility from Highway 212. We did work with the project office. They costed an alternative to put the tracks on the east side versus the west side. They also looked at wetland impacts, groundwater considerations, other design considerations. I think the results that came out of that analysis found that by relocating the tracks to the other side of the road, by their estimate, could add as much as $14 million to the project. I do know the property owner had their own engineering consulting firm take a look at it. They came up with a number closer to $3 million, but regardless, it was millions of dollars in added costs. I do know, too, that if the tracks were relocated to the opposite side of the roadway, there would be some wetland impacts that would not be present if it stays in its proposed location. And I know that through the environmental process, it's going to be very difficult to justify that wetland impact if it's not necessary. So I know that was a hurdle. Many of the other issues were non-issues, groundwater considerations. Coordination with the city's Shady Oak Road project was a concern we had. We found that either would work. I think at the end of the day, it was truly the added cost and the wetland impacts, I think, that tilted in favor of leaving it in its proposed location.
Thank you. That's clarifying.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Ellis? Okay, I'm sure everybody has been giving this a fair amount of thought over the last 12 years. It's been a long process. Does anybody want to make any comments before we have a motion and take a vote? Councilmember Aho, I think you were first, then Wickstrom, Nelson, Case.
All right. Well, this is going to be kind of long, I think, probably for everyone, because it is such a critical and important project for not only for our city, but for the whole Twin Cities metro area. And so I just want to give a brief intro that I have been very involved in transportation projects throughout my career in the city council, and I feel that it is a very very important project and a very important topic for our city. So as part of that, I chair the 494 Corridor Commission. I'm a member of the Southwest Transit or opt-out bus service. And so I just want to lay that out. I want to talk a little bit about, I know we're asked as part of this is to approve the design process, but really, and approve the design of this light rail line that we're given tonight. But this is really our only chance to vote on the whole topic at all as a city. And so I just want to talk about some other maybe more ancillary things, like the process. I think the project office did do a good job of communicating and holding public meetings on the design. And I think they really did reach out to a lot of people, and I think they held a lot of public meetings, and I think that was good and beneficial. But I think a lot of people that I spoke to felt as though that process was somewhat flawed in the fact that they were really not asked what they thought about light rail coming to Eden Prairie. It was more of a, do you like the design or do you not like the design? And I think a lot of people were off-put by that part of the process. I think as a city, we're really not given a choice as to whether light rail comes to Eden Prairie or not. We're given the option to approve the plan as presented, or we're given the option to say what we would change to approve the plan. But there's no option for anything other than that. I have some problems with the EIS not being completed on the route that's being proposed and us voting on it. I realize that as our legal counsel last meeting stated that many times this is the case where we don't have complete results of an EIS study before we're asked to give municipal consent. I don't think that's very comforting to me, because I think there's potentially a lot of issues with the current route. And I think think I've been pretty outspoken throughout the whole process about the route changes that were made from the LPA through the town center area. I think that it presents a lot of other issues. Another concern I have about kind of the process is that as a member of the Southwest Transit Board, we've been trying to get a memorandum of understanding between the project office and our bus service. And while we're getting closer to that agreement, we still haven't achieved that. And I'm really reticent to say that we're done and to give consent without that memorandum of understanding. Also, that memorandum of understanding is just simply that. It is a memorandum of understanding. It is not truly an agreement that necessarily is written in stone. That could change in future years given different situations. And so I'm concerned about potential loss of our main bus service, which is our express route from Eden Prairie to downtown. I think that is our key service that we provide as a bus service, and I think that's what makes us a valuable service to our customers. And we've polled our ridership, and they plan on continuing on the bus even if there is a light rail there for the most part. I think a very high percentage plan on doing that, and I'm concerned that once the Southwest LRT project is completed, we'll have invested $1.7 billion into infrastructure and capital, and if we are not seeing the ridership that is anticipated, it'll be very hard to justify continuing to pay the bus service as well. So that's a big concern of mine, that we might lose that service for our customers. Also, we want to be able to provide the local services with our bus service, and I'm concerned that we haven't gotten that agreement from the project office yet. I think that's an important aspect for our bus service, to provide that local connection. Let's talk about design issues. Being an engineer and a business person, I really focus a lot on design issues. And I think the route along 212, as we just discussed, as Councilmember Butcher Wickstrom brought up, there are some businesses that are very unhappy with the route going onto the western side of 212. I think there's a school there, as we've all heard, Fraser School, which has autistic children, and running that route close to their school may be very impactful on that business. I know that the current construction of the new Green Line shut down quite a number of businesses as a part of the construction process, and I'm just concerned that this may have a similar effect on some of our businesses. To me, the more problematic route is when it starts to get into the town center. I think when the route comes into the Golden Triangle in there, I think that route makes a lot of sense. I think it's serving a good number of people and jobs, and I think that really makes sense. But once it goes beyond that and we go through town center, I would have much preferred the original LPA path. I think we have issues with parking because we're going to have stations that are between Costco and Bachman's in that area, and the bowling alley. I don't know that it's going to be the traffic patterns are going to be good. I don't know that parking is going to be really fully handled. We're going to have a taking of the strip mall where FedEx, Martinizing, and the pizza place are. I think that's an additional taking that wouldn't have to happen if we did the other route. We've got a steep slope between Bachman's and Costco. I'm concerned about the track going through there and how that's going to impact that slope and how it might impact Bachman's. Purgatory Creek Park is one of our crown jewel parks, and to see the recreations and the images of what that's going to do to that park with that elevated track going right next to and in front of that park greatly concerns me, and I know it concerns a lot of our residents. I think it's going to very much change the nature of that park and the Veterans Memorial there as well. I'm concerned about also what it's going to do to Southwest Station and the Southwest Station condos. I recently met with the Homeowners Association at Southwest Station condos with Councilmember Nelson, and we heard the concerns of the owners there, and they are very concerned with how close that's going to come to their condo, how it's going to affect their view of the Purgatory Creek area. They're very concerned about the construction process with driving pilings into that soft soil there, very poor soil, how that's going to affect vibration, how it's going to affect their homes, how it's going to affect their home value, and I don't blame them at all. Optum Health campus. I think we've heard from the representative of Optum Health campus that they're very concerned about how the close proximity of the train to their campus is going to detrimentally affect the offices that are adjacent and also their auditorium and presentation center there. I think this new route has a lot more curves, which is going to cause it to run, the train to run slower, and it also generates more noise, as we found out when you do that. There's also the crossing of the entrance to Residence Inn and Baymont Inn and Suites. When that train is crossing their entrance and it's very close to those facilities, they're going to have to ding a bell or make some kind of signal to indicate that they're crossing, and that's going to be every few minutes. I don't know what kind of impact that's going to have on their guests, but I'm assuming that that's probably not a positive thing, given the close proximity. So those are kind of the design issues that I have. I think we have been much better sticking with the locally preferred alternative along closer to Highway 5. I think it just had a lot less issues. I understand wanting to move it closer to town center and getting people closer to town center, but I think we could have done an adequate job with local circulators provided by Southwest Transit to overcome that deficiency. And I think the new route just causes so many more issues with wetlands, with all those issues that I've discussed. My other concern is the capital cost. While the federal government is picking up a good percentage of it, it's still a lot is coming from our state. There's a huge capital cost. If I look at it from an engineering perspective and I say if I'm going to spend $1.7 billion on a project to improve transportation, am I getting the return on investment? And I know we have to look not just now in the near future, but we have to look long term. I just think that there's newer technologies that are coming out. I think that our society is changing very rapidly. We're seeing a lot of changes in technology in terms of cars and vehicles. I think there's some newer technology like the Hyperloop that's been proposed by Elon Musk and other people. And I just think that to invest in this older technology that's 100+ years old that we've ripped out in many cases, to reinvest in that in such a large way with a fixed route is a mistake. And I think it's going to change the nature of Eden Prairie quite a bit. I know we're seeing a lot of growing opposition by both residents and businesses, and we're getting a lot of emails and a lot of calls and letters regarding that. And I just think it's really going to change the nature of our community. And I think people moved to Eden Prairie not to be close to those kinds of infrastructure pieces. If you wanted to be close to that, people in Eden Prairie have a choice. They could have moved there. They moved to Eden Prairie because they want a serene park-like environment, and I think that's what we have. And I think with all of the tracks and the wires and the sounds and the bells, I think it's going to really change our nature of our community, and I think it's going to be very disruptive to our traffic patterns. I think there's absolutely some positive impacts to the project. Clearly there are some positive impacts. I just think that the negative impacts outweigh the good that will be produced, and so for that reason I don't support it.
Councilmember Wickstrom.
Yes, I guess I have just a little bit opposite view. I think that there's no perfect solution, but I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. So I'm going to give you my experience on the other side. So yes, this has been a long time in coming, and it certainly seems like it's more than 12 years, as the Mayor had mentioned, but light rail coming to Eden Prairie is not a new concept. And in fact, those of us who've been on the City Council have been reviewing light rail alignments and modifications for several years, looking for the most favorable plan for Eden Prairie residents and businesses. Over this time, there have been innumerable meetings, public hearings, open houses, and an array of ways that we were able to hear the comments and concerns of residents and businesses. And for that, I am grateful. These comments have really helped us to recalibrate and to create the best possible design plan for light rail in our city. Once built, the Southwest Light Rail line will add a spur to the regional system of light rail in the metro area. And it will eventually connect to the Green Line and the Blue Lines, which are currently existing, as well as the proposed Bottineau light rail line. Our residents in Eden Prairie and employees of area businesses will benefit from having more multimodal options for commuters, for drivers and riders. So while light rail is not a silver bullet to our congestion problems, it is one more way to move people around this very congested system. I am one of the many residents in Eden Prairie and in the metro area who will benefit from having more multimodal options. I work at a college located in the North Metro, and I drive to work every day. My home is 32 miles from my college, and while I have access to several highways to bring me to the North Metro, my drive time on a good day is generally 1 hour each way. And on a challenging day is 2 hours. And in the worst of conditions, which I experienced numerous times over the winter, as we all did, my drive time can take me as long as 2.5 to 3 hours, and that is each way. I sit with all the other drivers on the roads, stopped in bumper-to-bumper traffic on roads designed to travel at 55, 60, and 65 miles an hour, if you can move. But during many times throughout the day, you simply cannot. So while I'm stopped or inching along feeling frustrated, I often look around me to see who else is not getting to work or not getting home to be with their families. There are many drivers just like myself, but there are also large trucks transporting goods across the metro. There are construction vehicles trying to get to a job site, carpet cleaners, landscape companies, FedEx vehicles, and many other workers running late and trying to get to their next job. I often reflect on the lost time and lost productivity just waiting to be able to move on our congested highways. This is not just a quality of life issue for all of us sitting there in major traffic congestion. It is a serious business condition and is problematic for our future growth and development. In January of this year, I attended the State Economic Competitiveness Summit held by the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. In attendance were many Fortune 500 businesses from the region and other economic developers. One of the companies was the very innovative producer of three-dimensional printers, and it's a business located right here in Eden Prairie. I heard the VP of that company state that one of the needs for future growth and development for national and international improvement was in the area of transportation. He stated that we need to bring people in and move them around, as well as be able to move the goods produced here. His message was very clear. It is my great desire as an elected official to make sure we retain companies by figuring out inventive solutions to address these concerns. And in the future, maybe we will be able to do some more creative things, but countries all over the world still use trains that go fast and are very, very efficient. I also believe Eden Prairie would be remiss if we were not part of the overall regional solution to our traffic congestion. Pat Mulqueeny, president of the Eden Prairie Chamber of Commerce, in a recent letter to the editor, mentioned the need for light rail in our town to improve opportunities for economic development and improve mobility of commuters throughout the entire metropolitan region. He mentioned that the Southwest Metro will add an estimated 60,000 jobs in this corridor over the next 2 decades, making the reverse commute aspect an important inbound route. He states that this line will help connect employers with employees from all parts of the metro area and will provide development opportunities that would not exist without this option. I concur. Recently, I had the opportunity to ride on the newly opened Green Line that connects St. Paul to Minneapolis. And while it was a really rainy and windy day, the ride was amazingly smooth. It was very quiet and efficient. It was a great experience for me and one that answered a lot of questions that I had. And I also thought it was one more step toward that regional connectivity, and I believe the Southwest line is next. So as we hopefully move ahead with Southwest Light Rail, I look forward to having a continued seat at the Met Council table to get any additional concerns answered. There is still time to figure out environmental concerns and other issues that will probably arise. As a city council member, I want to show my support for the good work done so far by city staff and members of the council, as well as our Southwest Transit. And now I believe it is time for our city to make a decision, not only for the present, but for far into the future. So for me, this is the right time and the right decision to support Southwest Light Rail, and I plan to approve it.
Thank you. Councilmember Nelson.
I've had the opportunity to work on the Southwest Light Rail Works Committee and be an alternate onto the Management Committee. I know how hard our staff has worked with the input into Southwest Light Rail. I know how many things have been changed so that it goes better for transportation through our city. And I don't believe that just because we approve Southwest Light Rail tonight, that our input will stop. I believe that we still have to work to make sure that any vibration issues by either businesses or residents are taken care of. And I believe those issues can be taken care of simply because they managed to go through the University of Minnesota near some of their very busy health and science areas, that micrometers of vibration would change what scientists could do, and they were able to put through the light rail and have it coexist with those university needs. So therefore, I believe that they can, and our city will insist that they look into those vibration needs and take care of them. Things will continue to go along. We're at 15% engineering, and it will go more than that. And I have every confidence in our staff that they will bring to the table, to the meetings that they go to all too often sometimes, I think, for their own happiness perhaps, what our city needs. Over the last 6 years that I've been on these committees, I've talked to many residents, I've talked to businesses, I've talked to the chambers, and so many people seem to have the ideas that I think are proven out, that light rail coming into a community is one of the things that brings businesses and young professionals into a community. The two groups that are most excited about this are seniors on the one hand, as it's something they feel comfortable traveling on and safe, but even more so young professionals that are saying it's about time. If we don't have things that young professionals want coming into our communities, you'll find our communities graying. And that's not where we're going to be. I think this is an opportunity for Eden Prairie to build on the tech community that we have here and also what our citizens want. We've done several surveys and have had over 80% of citizens and residents say that they support light rail coming to Eden Prairie. So I plan to support it tonight. I count on our staff to continue their good work, solve any problems that come up, and if there are environmental impacts that simply doesn't work the way they'll help solve how it needs to go after that point. And I think there's always pluses and minuses in any changes, but I see the pluses outweighing the minuses, and that we can mitigate the minuses as we have been for the last several years.
Thank you. Councilmember Case.
Thank you. So this vote this evening is very specifically for approving the Metropolitan Council's plans for LRT infrastructure, or the physical design components of the preliminary plans for Southwest Light Rail, and only within our 34.6 square miles of Eden Prairie. And implied within that is that we're agreeing to the number and placement of the stations and the rail route. So I know people would like the vote to symbolically represent a lot more, but we're legislatively limited to tonight's specific vote. So to make the vote about something else feels very political gamemanship to me. Now, I have my opinions about the positives and negatives of spending 1.6, 1.7 billion, whatever it's going to end up, and probably more than that on this project. I have my opinion about the positives and negatives of having, in some ways, an opportunity, some view it as negative, one of the spokes of this spoken hub mass transit rail system come into our town. And I'll share my one piece of opinion tonight. On a personal note, I think 30 years from now, when none of us, I hope we're alive, but none of us are on the council sitting here, and really, I won't be able to be proven right or wrong because I don't know that I'll be here to have that confirmed, but I think the proof of the incredible economic gain for Eden Prairie will be obvious when the whole system's built out and the communities that got this amazing amenity have the benefits to show for it. And anyone up in that day will look back and go, someone actually thought this was not a good idea. It's like the interstate highway system. Someone actually, in the 50s, many people thought it was a horrible idea to invest the billions of dollars up front to build through states like North Dakota and Montana in places that would never be able to use it, or even the intercontinental rail route was not supported. If it had been given the opportunity, each community along the way to yay or nay it, none of that ever would have been built. So regional infrastructure transportation systems are not given the benefit of each community having a role to play in that, because nothing would ever be passed at that point. So for tonight, to be repetitive and redundant, our responsibility and our task is to vote yea or nay on the physical design components of the preliminary design plan, and only for Eden Prairie. And although I totally understand how each one of us might have all kinds of issues with light rail in general, with $1.7 billion price tag, I really don't understand how anyone could vote no tonight on the physical design components of the preliminary design plan. So I definitely plan to vote in favor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Case. The bad part about going last is a lot of it is going to be redundant, and I don't have the think quick skills to be able to edit and trim down my piece and still have a coherent presentation. So please just bear with me while I go through this. I've been on the council since about 1994, and we frequently survey our residents and our businesses, and we have very happy residents and very happy businesses. When we ask them for one thing that they see as a problem in Eden Prairie, the number one thing that continually comes up is transportation, transit. We listen to our residents. I assume they complain because they want us to do something about the issue. And we have. We've worked to add lanes to 494. We've built 212. We've been involved in building 212 to the west. We've improved bridges and intersections. We've advocated for the funding for Southwest Transit, our wonderful bus service that I've worked with for 20 years. I'm a huge fan of Southwest Transit. We've kept a strong and outstanding bus system here in this community. I do want to point out that 494 additional lanes, 212, public didn't vote for any of that infrastructure. They didn't vote for those transportation improvements. What is unique about light rail as a transportation solution that suddenly everybody should be voting on it? If we're going to do that, we should vote on all major projects like that that have impact on businesses and residents. Now regionally, another solution to traffic congestion is being proposed, and it would be really unconscionable of us as elected officials to not consider it as a possibility. Our population is expected to grow by about 40% by 2030. We have to do something. So in the late 1900s, a group of people began considering light rail for this Southwest corridor, and in 2012, we began a feasibility analysis. So that's 12 years ago, and I began then representing Eden Prairie on the Policy Advisory Committee, looking out for the interests of our community, the residents, the businesses, Southwest Transit. In fact, I represented Southwest Transit sometimes on these committees over the last 12 years. This period of time was followed by an alternatives analysis. The mode of LRT as the mode for this corridor was selected in 2007. Then we worked on the locally preferred alignment. That was the next step. This process was like every other step, a very open process full of transparency, and it involved continuous public input. We didn't just wait to hear from the public. The project office, the county, Met Council, our city, we all went out to seek input from our communities and our businesses. Over 30 different alignments were comprehensively analyzed, and this included alignment down the Hennepin County Regional Rail Trail, the bike trail, which I vehemently fought, and fortunately got it off of that trail. That's just an example of things that we did to alter the original proposals. In 2009, an alignment was selected, and there has been tweaking on that alignment since then. Changes that might reduce cost, improve access to jobs and residents, improve safety, et cetera. You know, it is nice it would have been nice to be able to bring light rail down a corridor that didn't present any issues for any residents or any businesses, but I guarantee you that that route would have been in the middle of nowhere. It wouldn't have served any purpose. In order to serve the purpose of serving businesses, bringing their employees to them, taking our residents to businesses, to the hospital, to visit their family, you have to actually get close to where people live and work, and in order to do that, some people are going to be inconvenienced. But this has been a very thorough study and a very thorough project. I just wanted to show, I brought a visual aid. These are some of the documents that I have for the two light rail committees that I'm currently on, the Community Management Committee and the Corridor, or the Community Works Committee. This is about a year, maybe a year and a half worth of documents, and some didn't make it into this pile because they were redundant, and I tossed them. This has been thoroughly studied. I've been doing this 12 years. I have no cupboard space in my den anymore. It is all LRT. So there has been a lot of input and a lot of thought given to this entire project. We're voting on the alignment in Eden Prairie. We are not addressing freight rail in Minneapolis or St. Louis Park, the number of stops along this corridor, the cost of the project, the possible alternative uses for those dollars, whether you wanted monorails or whether you wanted another highway ripping through our community. We're not talking about that. We're not even talking about whether or not the project should be done. We are not the ones that have to make that decision. We are simply asked, if light rail happens, are we comfortable with the proposed alignment through Eden Prairie? There is never a perfect option, simply the best option, and the best is definitely subjective. Yes, there are still a lot of unanswered questions, and the EIS is one issue, but I'm confident the project office cannot come in and just rip through an area and do all kinds of environmental damage. That will not happen. If all of the questions regarding LRT were answered before we move on to the next step, we would never accomplish anything, and that's true of almost every major project like this. No road project or bridge project can you answer all the questions that might come up before you start the project. And people understand that. In our daily lives, we're constantly moving forward with incomplete information. I'd like to point out that this project is not about addressing needs now. It is about preparing proactively for the future. How many times do we hear comments about government, things like, they should have done this a long time ago, or now it's too late to do this. They should have seen this coming. We can see this coming. We have a good idea of what the population is going to be in the future. We know that traffic congestion is an issue now. We need to prepare for the future. If we don't do something about it now and we wait for the future, it's not going to be any less controversial, and I guarantee you it will be more expensive. There's currently a lot of fear-mongering on this issue. We've seen that in letters to the editor and the emails we received. It's very unfortunate because it really obscures the reality. There is no doubt about it. Light rail transit will bring change to this community. It will be different. Some of the change will be good, some of the change will be bad. Change is scary, there's no doubt about it. With preliminary engineering at about the 15% level, everyone has questions, and eventually there will be answers and resolutions to the issues. Issues such as mitigation for noise, screening, safety considerations. So this is not a done deal, and approval tonight does not mean blanket permission to the project office to do whatever they want at will. We elected officials and staff will still be around addressing concerns if and when LRT is approved for funding, but that is not our decision. And one thing I wanted to point out when I was doing my little display with all of these materials, I am not the only person that has a stack like this. Brad probably has some, Kathy, you have some, Robert Ellis, our Public Works Director, Janet Jeremiah, David Lindahl, you all have huge stacks of papers. So we're all looking at different issues regarding LRT, and I think that those of us that have worked close with us are pretty comfortable. So I will be voting in favor of it too. So is there a motion?
Yes, I'm going to move to adopt the resolution approving the physical design component of the preliminary design plans for the Southwest Light Rail project within the city of Eden Prairie.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a report from, council member reports. Okay, Sherry. Councilmember Wickstrom, do you want to go first?
You bet. This is exciting. So recently I was able to have the honor of picking up an award on behalf of the city. And the award, I'm going to hold this up. Hope it doesn't fall. These are big blocks. This is the Green Step Cities Award. And we got the final 3 blocks. It's the highest level of achievement within this program. And there are, 850 cities in Minnesota, and I think about almost 70 of them are participating in this, but very few have actually received all 3. So what is this? What does this mean, and why are we involved in it? So it's called the Green Steps Cities Program, and it's designed to create energy efficiency, citywide sustainability, really green living, and it's also designed to encourage civic innovations around green practices. So we received the 3 blocks because we have met 17 of the 28 practices that have been set aside by this Green Step program. And the Green Step program is an innovation of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So what it means is that we have met the 17. We don't have to meet the full 28, but I'm pretty sure we will because we have wonderful practices here in Eden Prairie. So even before this program started, and it started in 2011, Even before it started, we already were doing these incredible things like our 20-40-15, which means that we made this commitment that we would have 20%, 20% energy efficiency, 40% greater fuel efficiency by the date of 2015. So we started already right out of the gate. We were already reaching for that height. So we were already doing a lot of things in the city that this program has asked cities to do. So I'm going to just list a couple of the best practices that Eden Prairie is a part of. One is efficient city growth. We know that we have, we do our comprehensive plan. We do fantastic planning. We have reused our historic buildings in an adaptive way. One great example is the Smith Douglas Morehouse, which is now a Dunn Brothers coffee shop. That too is an efficiency. The beekeeping ordinance that is fairly recent that was passed to encourage the fertilization of plants, that's one of the best practices. The Green Mid-Market neighborhood that we recently approved, that's another one. Our city's use of electric vehicles is another one, and our LED lighting. But those are just a few of the actions that Eden Prairie has taken. If you go online, you can see there are so many. We are a great leader in this. I'm sorry for my enthusiasm, but I just can't help it. I think that we've done such a good job. So what I want to do is, while I had the great honor of accepting this on behalf of the city, the kudos really go to our city staff's achievement, and particularly Regina Rojos, who is leading this effort, or Rojas, who is leading this effort, and she is working very, very closely with the Environmental Commission. I want to say a sincere thank you to her, the other city staff, and the commission. And this will be on display, by the way. This will be on display in a exhibit case.
Sure.
Right? You promised me.
Very important place.
You promised me.
Be on display at City Center.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you for that great report. I appreciate it. Councilmember Aho.
Just a real brief thing. I just, with all the rain that we've been having lately in Eden Prairie and across the state of Minnesota, it's led to a lot of problems and a lot of issues. And so I just wanted to talk briefly about kind of how it's impacted Eden Prairie in a way that we maybe didn't think about too much. And that is, I started receiving calls from residents that live on some of our lakes, and they were saying, look, the water level is above our docks. The boats are floating away off the boat lifts. If we have people that are driving their other boats on the lakes, it's really going to create damage to our docks, to our boats, to our property in general. And so we had a very quick response. I called the city manager, Rick Getchow. I called the police chief, Rob Reynolds, and I had some conversations with them. They were already pretty much aware of the situation. They were already working on it, which I was very happy to hear. And they were quickly responding, even though it was a weekend, and they got notifications out on Bryant Lake and out on Riley Lake to put a temporary no-wake restriction on. And I just think that was a great response. However, I don't think it should be an emergency, and I don't think we should have to do it in such a manner. We have a boat on the St. Croix, and when the water level hits a certain point of elevation, it's an automatic no-wake zone on the river. And I think that we should institute the same kind of thing here in Eden Prairie, that when the water level hits a certain level, automatically we put notifications out on our lakes that it's a no-wake restriction. That way, we don't have to deal with anything in an emergency situation. We can kind of plan it. We should be able to predict when those events are going to take place with some certainty, given the amount of rain. So I would just like you to research, city staff to research and figure out what those levels are that we would need to institute no-wake zones, and just to have that as part of our normal operating procedure, that we do that, so no one has to scramble and react suddenly.
Sounds like a good idea.
Really good idea.
Thank you. The issue I want to bring up is something that has been brought up in the past in various forms, I was contacted by a city resident this spring who lives on a lot that abuts city property, a very natural area. And this family has been mowing a little bit of property that's city property and leaving a larger area that is their own property unmowed to kind of balance off or compensate for the part that they're using of city property. Now, I know we don't like that, but this is not a case of somebody mowing their entire yard and then encroaching even further into city property. This is somebody who's kind of visually made it kind of a trade-off. Well, I won't mow there, leave that natural, but I kind of need this area here to enhance their, it's not so much to enhance their view, it's more the way their house is aligned on the property, and they didn't build it, they bought it when it was already constructed. The way it aligns, the natural area where you would go out and sit outside a patio is in a corner of the property that is pretty tight. So that's the area that they've mowed into. This is a situation where there's some slope down to a city trail, and the property at one corner comes right down to the city trails. They could theoretically put a retaining wall so that they can build this sloping property up. They could put in a retaining wall that which you would see when you were on this nature trail behind their house. You would see this obtrusive retaining wall in order to have all of their yard mowed. I'm not sure I'm making this very clear. We talked about the possibility of doing a land swap, and I asked staff and Mr. Rosso to look into that, and it seems that is not a feasible issue. So my question and the thing that I wanted to bring up is it possible that in some of these rare cases where it seems to me that there's almost a benefit to having this gentleman mow a little bit in that upper area which nobody can see from the trail versus mowing his property that goes right down to the trail in another area? There'll be very few cases like this. Is there a mechanism that we could build that would allow somebody to have some kind of a maintenance variance or a maintenance agreement with the city that would be limited to that property owner? They still could not build any structures on it. All it would be mowing. I just wanted to bring that up for discussion. Councilmember Case, is your light on for this? Okay.
So I've brought, what, 3 of these or
Yeah.
4 of these myself. So as you're talking, I'm going through every single
Yeah,
situation
right,
that
support you.
I had the privilege of going out to actually look. And right away, one came to mind where it made sense to me, and you know, everyone knows which one I'm talking about. It made sense to me to have these people have that flexibility to mow. But Mr. Lothammer, I'll speak right for you because you're itching to say it anyway, and so I know the words that will come out because I've memorized them now, hearing them so many times. It's a slippery slope, no, yes, pun intended. It's like, where do I mean, you can tailor it so finely for this particular lot that makes sense, but then you'll open up the potential 5 or 10. I can tell you right now, 4 of them will come, and theirs are just slightly different and maybe even make more sense than yours, not yours, than this particular case. And I empathize with theirs from the way you described it. If I was just the judge who could allow that to happen, it makes sense. Absolutely, let them mow whatever. But it doesn't give Park and Rec, and it doesn't give our staff the tools they need to do their job based on our direction, and we will complicate their lives. So I don't know what the answer is unless we change our rules. And we did it for a reason, and we appreciate, I think, the results today that truly our city-owned land is really truly getting better preserved than certainly it was years ago. I think we're walking down a really dangerous path of we can't say yes to somebody, no to the 4 that I went out to look at, So that's my only thought.
Okay. Councilmember Nelson.
Well, I too have had people call, and I've asked before that there be some way to have a case-by-case thing where they could be given permission for the specific piece of land to mow. And I still think there's a reason to be able to have that. It probably would be turned down mostly. You know, it obviously couldn't be in an environmentally sensitive area, but we own all these little outlots and this and that that are full of weeds. And I think there should be some way to do a case-by-case basis to have permission or whatever you want to call it to mow the specific small space. And I don't think it's a slippery slope. I think that it should simply be there, be difficult, perhaps have a fee attached to it, and that we should have some provision to allow a small amount to happen. But I'm sure that it's been turned down before, so it'll be probably turned down again, but I don't see any reason that we shouldn't have it.
Council members Case and Nelson, in the cases that you're talking about, are these places where they were mowing city property but not mowing part of their own property to compensate, or was this expansion of their yards?
Well, it actually was in the one case because it went down to wetlands toward the pond behind them, which they were willing actually to swap with the city, but it was the same issue.
Okay.
So it was that case where they were mowing a flat piece right next to a driveway, but then not mowing down to a pond, which was their own property. So it was. And, you know, I guess Mr. Rosso I'd love to hear speak. I mean, I realize we have a variance process in the city for other issues that are based on, what's the legal term when there's need that cannot be addressed any other way, and hardship or something. So I suppose if we use the same process for variances where hardship was, the case was made for hardship, then I suppose we wouldn't end up in court. But I'm just putting myself now in Mr. Rosso's position thinking, okay, you said yes over here, but no here. And you did it on what? On the subjective sense of, well, this one felt like, and so now we're going to charge you $20, and it feels like this is a good case. I think that's sending us into court really fast when the other 10 say, well, you didn't feel like that when I came in. Yeah, I don't know. You know, feel free to, I'm speaking for everybody here. You might guys speak for yourself, but yeah.
Mr. Rosso, Mr. Lothammer, anybody want to say anything there? Mr. Rosso?
The problem is that it's not similar to a zoning regulation. That's a good analogy in terms of the standard, but it's not a standard that would be recognized with respect to this issue. And so you correctly identify that, Mr. Case, that and it would be very subjective and hard to enforce. I think more than complicate the staff's life, it would complicate your life, because we on the staff know how difficult it is for those personal decisions, think cemetery markers, when they come to the council, and how you ask not to have that come to you again, or another council did, because it was so subjective and it should be dealt with in a more objective administrative manner. The other issues that complicate this is that these individuals happen to own a piece of property that they bought. That's what they own. The city happens to own other property, and so it's an ownership issue, and our ownership is not the same as a private property owner. Our ownership takes the form of dedications and plats by which we hold the land legally in trust for the benefit of the public. It takes the form of deeds with restrictive covenants that if the covenants are violated, it reverts back to the owner. It takes the form in some situations of land acquired by grants from the federal government, which prohibit changes in the use. And so we have all these different situations that would have to be ferreted out, researched, and I've done it on each one of these occasions. That, again, the time and expense that it costs the city of staff time and legal time to review all of those. So it is a very difficult
situation to deal with, and the staff, on behalf of the city, has an obligation to protect the public's interest in the lands that have been deeded, granted, conveyed, or otherwise donated to the city.
Yeah, listening to that, one other approach just occurred to me. Perhaps what we need is not to allow the neighbor to mow, but a process where the person can specifically request that the city mow certain property next to their home that they determine unsightly, that they might call the weed inspector if it was another neighbor.
That's an interesting concept.
And then we would
okay.
still have control over it, but that they would have the right to specifically request that we take care of our property adjacent to their specific and have a specific reason. Because they're doing it because they don't like the way it looks. And now we could tell them, no, this is an environmentally sensitive place, or we in fact could mow it.
We could have the weed inspector, the official weed inspector mow it.
Not the assistant.
Not the assistant, but the actual weed inspector.
Riding mower. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting concept, because we could have some fairly strict guidelines that say, don't even ask us if you want this, just to expand your property. If we could address the specific situations where something like this might be allowed.
Then someone would have to cross probably private property to get to that little corner, because if they're coming up a city hill that's, treed and whatever, I mean, I think that's interesting again, because again, we could case by case it. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I think staff would be standing here going, no, but not sure.
But on the other hand, they could pay for it. We could employ some college student in the summer that goes around and does that. Summer jobs, job creators.
Your Honor, council members, if I might, and start by thanking Councilmember Case for my comments of his.
You're welcome.
His comments of mine. They've been very good and insightful to me as well. But in a sense, we do some of that already, what Councilmember Nelson is suggesting. And just to tell you a little bit what we do, we respond when people call. We've got a gentleman that has called us where some cockleburr, some more noxious weeds has occurred, that we've now gone multiple years to help spray that. We do spray throughout the city. We get a little bit from time to time, and the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Is it all weeds, or is it a variety of good natural and native grasses and things? And it can, short of going out with the horticulturalists and doing the inspections and things, it's a tough one to do. But we do spray where we can. It's not cheap to do, especially if you are doing it on a very small individualized basis. We do it as broad as we can, and at a budgetary level that seems reasonable for the entire community. We just approved a request for somebody to remove buckthorn on city property that's near their residents. So we do allow people to do some of it themselves where it's appropriate. Again, to do that well, we have somebody go through a process so we can visit the site, we can show them how to do it correctly, we can make sure that it's done in a way that doesn't actually make it worse than if you wouldn't have touched it at all. So some of that we do. Just a little bit of perspective on the cost that Mr. Russo indicated. Just as an example, if you take 10 houses that all back up to city property that we go to inspect, for every one of those houses that is kind of on their side of the line and not infringing on city property, it's probably less than $100 for us to be there. As soon as we have somebody that's across the line, it becomes hundreds of dollars in follow-up. Sometimes we have to actually do an actual survey, thousands of dollars. For anybody that wants to challenge that process, it becomes thousands of dollars. So for those that we give that thank you letter to, financially, we all sincerely thank them for doing that, because they've remained on their side of the property line. Anybody else, that price tag continues to escalate up, whether it's attorney costs, their attorney costs, staff time, extra visits back. Sometimes it's our police officers having to, let them know that we're actually serious about the line too. So we do some combinations of that. I have about once a year, I think we've come before you and shared a presentation that depicts it with some actual pictures of those that we've suggested can't be on their property anymore, some of it in a great deal. And I know that in some cases, the $10,000 and $20,000 and $40,000 improvements that people have made, they're actually real hard improvements. It's not just mowing or not mowing. But there is certainly a cost and a fairness. That's what I've recalled us talking about in the past. If we've made X amount of people, the 900 people that have been already asked to stop doing what they were doing, if we've made them stop doing what they were doing, how do we let that kind of can of worms open up? So something else to think about or wrestle with too if we approach this differently.
Okay, thank you. Good discussion. Report of the city manager, the strategic plan update.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to move over to the other podium quick. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes giving and providing you an overview of some of the work that we've been doing kind of at that, in some cases at that 30,000 foot level. Much of this information it's been seen by the council. You've discussed this in workshops and other meetings, and also we're pleased to kind of unveil what we'd like to call as a performance dashboard. But before I do that, I just want to provide a quick overview on what we call the Eden Prairie Promise. And the idea is that we've got kind of a base in that pyramid that is made up of the individual work plans of each and every city employee and all the work plans of each and every division and department. You may remember that I was before you about a year and a half ago with the latest updates to those plans that showed city strategies down to the daily work level, along with the expectations that we have for our employees and our leaders. But as we work our way to the top of the pyramid, it's supported by a vision and a mission in what we previously had called key results. And in that top of the pyramid, that's an area that the city council, the elected officials, the community spend some time thinking about and reinforcing. And in fact, our vision and mission have stayed intact for almost 10 years. And if I can read those really quick, I will, because when I get to some of the goal statements and strategies, and you think about the daily work in Eden Prairie, it does go back to thinking about our vision, a vision which would be considered what we aspire to. What do we want to be? Eden Prairie is a vibrant city characterized by the thoughtful integration of natural beauty and physical development that creates a highly desirable place for its residents and businesses. So in one sentence, the feeling is that that's the vision that we aspire to that still holds true to this day. Our mission, the mission of the city government, is to foster respect for the past, plan for the future, and deliver high-quality public service that contributes to a strong sense of community. So there are some words in there: sense of community, high quality service, respecting the past and present, that gets built into our everyday work. So we had, up until just earlier this year, what we considered were key results. The kind of glue that could connect the work plans and the daily actions up to the vision and mission. And the feeling was that maybe we need to re-energize that. Maybe we need to find a way to better align some of our goals with our mission and vision. Think about more strategies of how we measure our success and how we measure our goals. So as you know, we've been spending the last year or two trying to increase our use of measures and strategies just to know how we're doing and how we could improve. So that led to a discussion at your level of turning key results into goals. So on the left, you'll see some key results that were probably about 10 years old, and the feeling was that those needed to be updated to bring us into the present. So there are several components that still apply. A healthy, safe, strong community, a preserved and beautiful environment, and responsive and accessible government now moves into innovative and sustainable practices. That's kind of an update on where we're at as a city. And also delivering, you read in that mission statement, high quality, effective services. And even as recently as last month, there were comments from some staff members and the council that we don't see a mention of an economically vital community, one that values its businesses and growing its tax base and really connecting in with the chambers of commerces and the organizations and thinking about how economically vital we want to continue to be. So in coming up with those goals and definitions, we put some meat behind each one of those goals and defining what those are. And you're going to see when I get toward the end of this that this is all something that we're putting out on our website to explain to our community that we think most of what we do can feed into these 6 goals. That we are focused on the high quality, efficient services, our preserved, beautiful environment, promoting a sense of community by the programs we offer for all spectrums of our residents, always looking for ways to be innovative and sustainable, and looking out in growing our diverse and prosperous tax base. So we've got an update to what we call our Eden Prairie Promise and our strategic plan that brings some key results into goals. And as we continue to move forward on a semi-annual basis, or once every 2 years, biannual basis, we will update all of our work plans as well to align with the budget and our goals. So you can see that on our city website, we'll be updating our strategic plan. We're going to lay out the vision, mission, and then we're going to illustrate the goals. And even more importantly, we're going to fill in the strategies that you as a council have brainstormed at different sessions that we think can fit into almost each and every goal. So if you think about your thoughts in terms of where we should be headed, you'd be surprised at how many of our goals that these can fit into. Some of our current initiatives with the duty crew, and we're talking about point of sale inspection programs, and you heard about the bike and pedestrian master plan and development and design standards build into community well-being and safety. In terms of high quality, efficient services, we are going to be updating our survey that you mentioned. And I wanted to correct you, Mayor, really quickly. I think you said the #1 concern of residents was traffic congestion. That's actually the #2 concern. The #1 concern is nothing.
Oh, that's
I just
right.
wanted to correct. So we'll be updating that survey, and as you know, you see your 2-year budget, your 10-year capital improvement plan, and a lot of these different issues that we have. Lake water quality was mentioned tonight. We're currently doing a closed landfill. Well, we aren't. The state is. We're reviewing our design standards. All seem to fit into many of our goals, and also this focus on a sense of community. Growing our events, improving our city events, our public art, our placemaking efforts, our citizen engagement efforts, we all know can build a sense of trust in our city and our government when we're more connected to our residents and we provide opportunities for them to gather as well. And the last example I'll give in innovative and sustainable practices are several recent projects that we've taken on to improve service delivery, but also do that in a cost-effective manner. So with that, hopefully you can see that line of sight from some of the everyday strategies and annual strategies that will be put on the website, how it can fit in to our goals and how it builds up to the mission and vision. So the last thing I wanted to mention was the unveiling of a performance dashboard, which we think is another way to provide transparency and information to our electorate. We keep a lot of information about just city operations in general. A lot of it we get from our city survey. Some of it is information that is just collected. What better way than to share that information with the public? So if you look at our new dashboard that was just unveiled live on our website today, you can see within the 6 city goals, we have different ratings on different items that you can track throughout the time that we've surveyed our residents or collected the data. So in this case, in high-quality services, we can track that rating of everything from the courtesy of our city staff to the rating of our snow plowing to the rating of our city streets. In the sense of community, we can keep track of how many people are aware of our programs, how many people participated in our programs, and actually put that out there. Watch it, track it, hopefully improve it over time, but more importantly, make it readily available to our residents. So you can see as you scroll over, there are actually, these are actual details on water consumption, participation rates in recycling, so we can keep that information, track it. And we've always had that information, but this is the first time that we think that we can share it in a format that's probably a little easier to read and sort through and understand, and have it sorted through in a way that actually matches up with some of our city goals. With that being said, there isn't any action tonight, and goals and mission and vision are always living, moving documents. But this is probably a good time to report on some of your recent conversations and your brainstorming over the last few months in terms of our strategic plan. With that, with the dashboard, I want to thank our IT manager and communications manager, and we have some representatives from Human Resources too that spent a lot of time helping put this together. So Joyce Lorenz, Christy Etter, and Jackie Schwerman, and Christine Rusek put a lot of time into most of what you saw tonight, but I just wanted to provide a brief report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Getchell on this? The only question I would have is, do we have a way to document how frequently this dashboard is accessed? Because I think it's wonderful, and for us on the council, it's a great tool to see how staff is doing on delivery of our goals, but it's a lot of work getting all the information out there and posted, I would think. So is there a way to tell if it's actually being used?
There is. I think all areas of our website that are visited, we can track how many visits and not who goes there, but how many people go there and how often, so we can track that, Mayor. I think one of the things also to keep in mind is it was quite a bit of work loading it in the first time, but now we'll be to a point where we can update those numbers. So I think the work going forward won't take as much time, but there was quite a bit of effort to get the initial dashboard up, but now that it's up, I think it isn't that expensive or that time consuming to keep updating it year after year.
Okay, great. Thank you. It looks wonderful. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item is a report from the Community Development Director, Janet Jeremiah, on the Southwest Corridor Investment Framework Report.
Your Honor, council members, I'm asking you tonight to adopt a resolution accepting the Southwest Corridor Investment Framework, subject to 3 conditions. And this investment framework is the result of the Transitional Station Area Action Planning Initiative, in which Eden Prairie has been involved for some time. And there has been a substantial public process involved with this. It's a Hennepin County Community Works Initiative funded through HUD's Sustainable Communities Program. And there have been a number of open houses held, as well as Planning Commission and City Council meetings to discuss this, not only in Eden Prairie, but along the 5 communities along Southwest LRT. It's been a very collaborative effort with the county, including helping select the consultant. And you probably recall that the consultant, HKGI, was at a council workshop back in March to present to you and discuss the final draft report of this investment framework. And council provided comments with regard particularly to the Golden Triangle area, where you felt the immediate station area was showing too much housing at the potential detriment of existing and future employment growth. So one of the conditions is to amend the Golden Triangle future land uses map to include more employment opportunity and a bit less housing opportunity in that area. And in fact, compared to the plan that you saw in March, This would involve the opportunity for additional 6,500 employees in that area and 800 fewer housing units, although there would still be the opportunity to grow about 1,900 housing units in that area, with a total employment growth of about 9,000 compared to today. So again, we're kind of looking right now in this immediate station area, not the entire Golden Triangle. There's even more growth opportunity throughout the Golden Triangle area. The other two conditions involve the town center and then just a general condition. With regard to the town center, staff noted at the workshop that there was an east-west roadway proposed north of Single Tree that inadvertently clipped the south side of the Emerson Rosemont building, and that was intended to be preserved. So we just want to make sure those maps are corrected so that it's clear that there's no intent to redevelop the Emerson Rosemont building. And then the final condition addresses the understanding that this is to be a living document and that it is subject to future amendments as additional information becomes available and as city policies may change in the future. Also, as far as this being a guide as a potential land use map and potential future changes to the comprehensive plan, those would require public hearings, planning commission involvement, and eventually Metropolitan Council approval. So we're not actually changing land uses via this document. It's really a recommending document for future consideration. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the resolution accepting the Southwest Corridor Investment Framework in accordance with the three conditions that I just outlined. I'll certainly take any questions.
Questions for Ms. Jeremiah? So again, we are approving this. These are not land use changes. These are just suggestions. It's like we looked at this piece of land and said, if we're going to do some more industrial, where would it be? Where would housing be? Whatever. We're not tied in. We're not obligated to the 1,900 additional units. We're not obligated to the industrial development if we decide we want to do more housing. This is just an idea, correct? Okay. Because one of the things that kind of still bothers me, even though we've reduced the number of housing units, is where is the park space for those housing units? Is it going to be on site? And if so, I would want to be darn sure that whoever might go in and buy some of this land for development doesn't assume the whole piece is available for development.
Your Honor, council members, with regard to the park space, part of the reason that much of the housing is proposed in the southern part of the Golden Triangle is to address greater green space, greater greenway opportunities and trails and the like. So it is to take advantage of those opportunities. I do want to point out that our 2030 comprehensive plan anticipates 2,500 to 2,600 additional housing units in the Golden Triangle. So this would actually be a reduction compared to what's already adopted by the city, but based on all of the conversations, that we have had with regard to the importance of employment in that area, staff does think that's appropriate. When we were originally doing the Golden Triangle redevelopment study back in 2003, 2004, there was still the concern with the ramp metering and the amount of office development that could take place based on that limited transportation system. And with that being relieved and LRT now looking more like a reality, we have looked at this from a capacity standpoint and it looks doable.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Oh, I can read it.
Okay.
I would move to adopt the resolution accepting the Southwest Corridor Investment Framework Report subject to the following conditions. Number one, the Southwest Corridor Investment Framework will be amended to revise the Golden Triangle area future land uses in accordance with the revised map included as Exhibit A. Number two, Southwest Corridor Investment Framework will be amended to revise the Town Center future east-west roadway alignment to avoid impacts to the existing Emerson Rosemont building. Number three, Southwest Corridor Investment Framework will be updated and amended as new information and City of Eden Prairie policy direction becomes available.
Is there a second?
come on, I did the hard part.
Any discussion? Councilmember Nelson?
All it takes is one word, guys, come on.
Councilmember Nelson?
I am glad that they have changed things to Exhibit A, as I had some definite concerns over the huge amount of residential that had previously been industrial that they took up. And I think this is much better. And hopefully, this will also impact that we don't have quite as many one-level buildings with huge amounts of parking surrounding them. Then followed by green space, which is always good, but it does seem like some of these areas might be considered for multiple kinds of uses. And that's the other thing I don't want to really be locked into, is maybe there's some place that you do want commercial or even industrial on the bottom couple levels, and you want it to go up a couple levels where you've got some other kinds of development, you know, be it office or be it even residential under certain circumstances, that we could, you know, I don't want to be locked into this is what we have to do. So as long as number 3 is there saying this doesn't lock us in, that we can be more innovative if we want to, I think it's good.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. We've got 2 things coming up on the agenda that are kind of a little bit rare. We're going to go into closed session to discuss the purchase of 11201 Burr Ridge Lane, and we also have an HRA meeting. Is this correct that we're going to go into closed session, come back, adjourn closed session, and then open up the HRA meeting after we adjourn the council meeting? Because usually
Yes.
we have it within the council meeting.
We're going to do it just the way
Okay.
you said, yes.
Okay, all right. All right, then that's what we are going to do. We're going to move into closed session to discuss the purchase of 11201 Burr Ridge Lane. The council will not be taking action on the purchase, and we will adjourn the council meeting upon coming back to the chambers from the closed session. So we will now go into closed session.
We stay put.